Hello and welcome. My name is Sarah, for those who haven't met me, or I haven't met you maybe. I'm one of the pastors here, and I have the honour of doing the message for this morning. Before we start, I want to just tell a quick story about a couple, and it's a Sunday morning, and the alarm goes off. She gets out of bed and nudges her husband and says it's time to get up. She goes off into the shower and starts getting herself ready. Comes out and her husband's still in bed. And she said, "Come on, babe, we've got to get going. We've got church today." And he said, No, I don't want to go. It's too early. And so she says, "Well, come on, we've got to get moving." So she just goes off and has a bit of brekkie, whatever, and comes back. Husband's still in bed. "Honey, we've got to go. It's getting close to heading off." "No, it's too early, and really, I don't want to go to church. I don't have any friends there. No one likes me. They don't like me there." And she said, "Babe, you're the pastor. You've got to go." So, that is by no means reflective of Gary and myself, can I just say? But, a story I heard. And obviously it could be the other way around. I want to talk today about perseverance, and somebody reminded me this morning, and actually I have been reminded a few times, that my last one was on be strong and courageous. So I'm hoping that this is, a part 2 or a step 2 of this. And if you don't like the message, can you just blame God? Because really, this is just something, I don't know if you know Gary's style of giving sermons, but somehow he just gets it like, whoa, a download. And it could be in the middle of the night, it could be throughout the day, and he just grabs pen and paper or his computer and blur, and he's got it. Me, it's like a drip feed. I just get this idea sort of out here, and initially it could be just something I'm thinking for myself. But it just develops, and it could well actually be for me, in which case I'm taking up your time to preach to me. But I'm hoping that there might be some elements for you as well. And I would like to think that this is of God, because seriously, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him, and I wouldn't be up here doing this. I do obviously enjoy preaching, but I do not want to take up your time and God's precious time by just rabbiting on about some random thing that interests me and is totally irrelevant to you. So please know that this is of God, and there might be just elements here that sit with you. Hopefully the whole thing sits with you, and hopefully it'll be something that sticks in your mind. Perseverance within the Christian realm is often used to describe Christians who endure and remain steadfast in the face of opposition, attack and discouragement. In the process of persevering as a Christian, we need to focus on Jesus, as he can help bear our load. It involves patience and commitment. And if you're anything like me, you want patience, but you want it now. Or maybe that's my prayer to God quite often. I want to take you through a few elements of persevering as a Christian, and then I'm going to talk about a bit of a story that just occurred to me as I was sitting here. Possibly it could be treated as a bit of a parable, but we'll get there. So perseverance within the Christian realm, I think, involves a whole variety of things, and some of us are quite good at one aspect, but not so good at another. So, but they all work together. They do all work together. First one is prayer. As it says in Ephesians chapter 6, pray in the Spirit at all times and on every occasion. Stay alert and be persistent in your prayers for all believers everywhere. Prayer. Like seriously, you cannot be in relationship with God if you're not going to pray. Prayer is our way, or one of many ways of communicating. And unless you're going to sing everything, which for me would be disastrous, prayer is a time of communicating with God. And it can be done anywhere. In the car with the windows up or the windows down, in work, in the middle of the night, as you're walking up and down. It can be solid, sit down, this is my chair, this is my Bible, this is my prayer time, my solid prayer time for the day. I do it every morning, or I do it every evening, or I do it once the kids are off to school. As well as that, prayer is as you're literally going about what you're doing. A lot of arrow prayers, I think, are important throughout the day. And it could be just as you're driving. Wow, thank God that I managed to stop there because someone just ran a red light. Or it could be a thought comes into your mind, it'd be a person, and you shoot off a quick prayer for them. It might be to the extent that you actually, when you're not driving, at a safe time, you might think, I'll just send them a quick text. Can I just encourage you that in this day of social media and stuff like that, let's actually use this for good. And it could be you send off a quick message, hey, just thinking about you, wondering how you're going. The number of times I've heard stories of how that has just been so apt, so timely. I think we've heard a couple of stories from Lisa where she's been in communication with someone. She's got a person on her mind and she just thinks, hey, I'll contact them later. No, you've got to do it now. And the timing is amazing. We could not ask for a better time, but somehow God knows all this. Prayer. Hebrews 12 goes on to list some of the great heroes of the Bible. But he's referring here, the topic here is faith. So we need to have faith that things will happen, that God is good. We need to remember that God is there with us through the good times, the bad times, through the battles, through the blessings. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. You just need faith the size of a mustard seed. It also says that faith can move mountains. It seems pretty bizarre. But as you heard from Gary sharing the testimony of somebody we know, who would have thought that two people who are medically defined as being infertile can have a baby naturally? This person we know lives interstate, and I sent back a text because we'd been praying for her and her husband that, if I was there, I'd be doing the happy dance all over her, which is probably better that I was interstate because it wouldn't be good. It would be not an attractive sight, but it's just, I was so pumped, so excited. But who would have thought? And I have to say in reflection that my prayers were not just like suddenly clearing the deck, down on my knees, praying for hours, sobbing and crying. It was praying at the time, but also my little arrow prayers afterwards. It's going to be amazing to meet this baby. Faith. So prayer and faith. Service. So my dear brothers and sisters, be strong and immovable. Always work enthusiastically for the Lord, for you know that nothing you do for the Lord is ever useless. I want to highlight a few things here. Service is not, I've got to go around and I've got to be busy. I've got to be part of the kids' min and do the cafe, and I've got to go out and serve the hungry, and I've got to do this, and I've got to... Busy. God does not, in fact, I don't know the Greek or the Aramaic, but I don't recall hearing the word busy written in the Bible. Please be busy. But what this is meaning is that once you know God and you just realise what Jesus has done for you, you are just filled with just, supernatural energy or direction or whatever, to actually, you want to go out and share the gospel. You want to actually be like Jesus. You want to be his hands and feet to others. You want to go and possibly get involved with a few things at church, but you also within your work environment, you want to be shouting someone a coffee or checking in on how they're going or sending those text messages, or once a week you do go and help feed a lot of people who don't have food, etc., etc. But we're not called to be busy. We're not called to be so focused on having our diary of all these things, and aren't I good how I serve these people and I do this and I run this and I'm involved in that ministry. Because when do you actually stop and have rest? God calls us to rest. When do you hang out with God? When do you just go and spend time with people and just hang out with them? Or are you hanging out with people because I'm here with you for an hour, I'll have a coffee with you because then I've got to go and I've got to go somewhere else and here's all the soup and the food, now I've got to go somewhere else. Like, God does not call us to do that. So service needs to be taken under the context of what does God call us to do. And that last little bit there, for know that nothing you do for the Lord is ever useless. I'd like this to be an encouragement for you wherever you are, because there will be times when you're thinking, what am I doing here? What am I doing in this job? Why am I stuck in this little place for a house? Why do I have to be doing X, Y, and Z? You know, I believe I'm called for bigger and better and more wonderful things. Why does nobody ever notice what I'm doing? If your eyes are on God, you will know that what you're doing is for God. Brother Lawrence is, I think, someone that we've referred to at different points. He's just got an amazing attitude to just peeling potatoes and washing dishes, and he was doing that for God. Like, bring it on. We all need potatoes peeled and people need to be fed, sort of thing. But it's not just the people that we see. And I would like to think we've all got this awareness that just because I'm up here talking and the music team did a stunning job, but we've got, those people have been practicing and rehearsing throughout the week. We've got the sound desk people who are just helping to make these people sound wonderful, and at the moment helping to make me sound audible, etc., etc. There are people that, and I'm just talking within the church here, but also know that within your work environments this is the case. There are people who are working throughout the week to make sure things are all working tickety-boo. You wouldn't know it when you walk through here. You wouldn't know what has happened in this place, what crises, or what Gary and I are doing as we madly rush around trying to connect cords and buy things or clean up messes and stuff like that. And it's not happening every week, but I'd like you to know that, well, it used to be the phrase, what is it, behind every good man there's a wife, there's a woman. It's more so whoever is prominent, whoever we're reading about, whoever is fantastic and has fantastic messages and prophetic words for us, and we listen to or we watch or we follow or we read, to know that there are actually people behind them who will not be seen by us to help that person. Have the time to write the book, put the music together, sit down and share their prophetic words with us. So if you think by you just doing whatever you do and it's not enough and, God doesn't see me, it's a lie. The evil one is telling you it's a lie, okay? So if you're stuck at home with dirty nappies and screaming kids, that's where you're meant to be and that's where God wants you to be. If you're in a job that feels pretty tedious, but you know that that's where you're meant to be, just know that God knows you're there. And you are there for good. Don't ever let the evil one tell you that what you're doing is a waste of time and that you are a waste of time. Not true. Just not true. Obedience. This can be a bit tricky because really, I'm meant to be adulting, so I'm meant to be making my own decisions and I've got family and people to be looking out for and deciding on, but actually I also need to be obedient too. And obviously this is John writing in Revelation, and the smoke of their torment will rise forever and ever. There will be no rest day or night for those who worship the beast and its image, or for anyone who receives the mark of its name. This calls for patient endurance on the part of the people of God who keep his commands and remain faithful to Jesus. We have got to be obedient to God. And you are obedient if you are in somewhere that you think, actually, what am I doing here for? Or you are obedient if you feel God is nudging you to just jump ship. Stop something and you think, but where am I going next? I don't know that next step. If you're obedient, God will bring that step in for you. You might not know 5 steps down the track, but you've got to trust that God will be there to catch you and to provide that next step. And amazing things will happen. If you are obedient to God, amazing things will happen and can happen. Perseverance is connected to other traits. So as it says in 2 Peter, but also for this very reason, giving all diligence, add to your faith virtue, to virtue knowledge, to knowledge self-control, to self-control perseverance, to perseverance godliness, to godliness brotherly or sisterly kindness, and to brotherly sisterly kindness love. That is ultimately what we're called to do, is to love each other, love our enemies, love the people we actually don't want to love, but love them because God gives us that strength and that power. He provides the love. He infills us with love. The story of Corrie ten Boom, when she was giving this talk about forgiveness post the war, and this is in the States, and the guy walked up to her and she knew straight away that he was actually one of the prison guards where her sister died, and she saw amazing levels of torture and abuse and just awfulness. And she saw him coming towards her. She just talked about forgiveness. What was she going to do? Or should she just turn around and quickly hide? That's probably what I would have done. Or just pretend I'm busy or I'm not here. But she knew she had to. The guy stretched out his hand to shake her hand. And I don't think at that point he acknowledged who he was, but she knew straight away. She recognised him. And he had become a Christian in the intervening time. She stretched out her hand. She knew she had to and she didn't want to. But as she did, she felt love sort of stream through her into him and forgiveness. So perseverance is not just I'm persevering and I've got this hard-looking face on me and I'm just going forward. It's actually tied in with all these other traits that are so important. Now, this is where I've got a story I want to share with you, and some of you might actually know this guy. And when I read about him just recently. Like, I knew of him and I've remembered about him, but just some of the aspects about him, I thought, actually, this is a parable for us to persevere. This guy, Cliff Young, he was 50-something, 60-something, when he decided to run in the 1983 Sydney to Melbourne Marathon. As it says there, 875 kilometres, a picture of him, and he won. He won the race. He ran from Sydney to Melbourne, and he won. And my understanding is that there were only 5 other people that actually crossed the line. Others fell by the wayside along the way. He ran for 5 days and 15 hours to cross the line. He beat the world record by 2 days. The next runner crossed 9 hours later. There was $10,000 prize money. He was totally unaware that there was prize money. He was totally unaware of the quantity. He ran because he wanted to. He just wanted to give it a crack. And what he did do with that 10 grand was he then stood at the finishing line, and as the other 5 people crossed, he shook their hand, welcomed them. He actually shared all that money with them. He took none of that money for himself. Now, this is not a parable that we all need to go and enter the Sydney to Melbourne Marathon, because I, for one, would be the last person doing that. It's not going to be a pretty sight, apart from all the whinging and whining I'd have before then, so you wouldn't want to hear that. But there's some aspects about Cliff Young that I think we can take for walking on the path that God has for us. First of all, he actually wasn't a runner. Like, he wasn't brought up as a runner, as a marathon runner. He was a farmer. Now, it could be anything. I'm not saying farmers, like, really, who'd be a farmer? But what I'm highlighting here is that he won this race, but he was not a runner. He was not known for being a runner, a marathon runner. He was a farmer. It could have been a teacher, it could have been a banker, a nurse, a cleaner, a pastor. It could have been anyone. He was a farmer. He was not a marathon runner. He was not known to be a marathon runner. His outfit as he ran was not the latest in the lycra and the brand names written across him and his sponsors and somehow having a water bottle attached through his t-shirt or whatever. He ran in a t-shirt and could have been tracky pants, and he was wearing sand shoes, but he was actually, I get the impression that when he started, he turned up ready to race. People were looking at him and thinking, seriously, are you at the right place? You know, you're not wearing the right outfit. And how old are you really? And everyone else was no doubt under 30. So we're starting to get a sense that people are looking at him thinking, are you at the wrong place? Like, you know, the local farms are sort of 200 miles away. And really, why are you wearing that outfit? He's not exuding, hey, I'm pumped, I'm here as a marathon runner, flexing his muscles. His technique, as he started to run in that first day, the reports were coming through that his technique of running was really quite shocking. That's not how a marathon runner runs. What are you doing? He wasn't exuding marathon runner techniques. Before he started, he had to take out his false teeth because they rattled. So he was actually preparing for the marathon. He knew that if he ran with his false teeth in, they're going to rattle. And for, 800 and something Ks, that's just not going to be good. So he was actually preparing. He did not know that as part of this marathon, you were meant to stop at different points for rest. What everybody else did was they would run for a period of time, let me just work out my maths, say 16 or so hours, and then they would have 8 hours, at least roughly, of rest. So this is how the other marathon runners who had prepared for this site were no doubt wearing the correct outfit, didn't have to remove their false teeth. They ran, and a bit like the story of the tortoise and the hare, they just shot off, and he was left behind. So probably on that first day, he was providing that bit of a comedy aspect to it. Like, they'd just gone, couldn't see him for dust. He's doing his shuffly run, had removed his teeth. But he did not know that he was actually allowed and able to stop. So what he did was he kept going. He just kept running. Part of the reason that he did this, and this was how he actually trained for the marathon, was when he was younger, his family had a sheep farm. And if there was a storm coming, he knew that in a few days' time that the storm was coming, he would be running round their fields and their paddocks to gather the sheep in. And he would be running in the dark to collect all the sheep before the storms came. And he'd be doing this for 2 or 3 days. His footwear at the time, being a farmer, was gumboots. So he was used to running for 2 or 3 days without stopping. He was used to running in the dark and in the daylight, in the morning and the night, and the sun and the rain. This was his training as a younger person. And so he was thinking, well, he can run for 2 or 3 days chasing 2,000 sheep or whatever it is. So what's a 5-day marathon going to do? He could do that easy. But he did this. So he was running around after sheep. He was using that same running technique with his gumboots for when he's doing this marathon. And his technique was actually more of a shuffle. It wasn't actually the full-on, and I'm not going to demonstrate because, again, it wouldn't be attractive, but it was not the proper running technique. He was actually doing more of a shuffle because he was no doubt used to running with gumboots on, which aren't quite sort of staying on all the time. But what he did was he just continued shuffling his run through the night as everyone else slept for about 6 hours. You could try this maybe on your way out when you get your coffee or go home. It's actually referred to the young shuffle, where he maintained a relaxed position. He kept his knees low. That's meant to be knees, not need. He shuffled his feet for smooth gliding motion, which I guess meant his feet are not actually leaving the ground too far. So his run was more about efficiency and endurance than speed. So he actually won the race by slow and steady rhythms, not by big resolutions, not by shooting out of the line, a bit like the rabbit would or the hare would. He was just like the tortoise, one step in front of the other, one step in front of the other. He kept moving. He pressed forward. He did not stop, and he persevered. He also kept going in the dark. I don't know what it is about the dark, but it does seem that the night time is when you can feel so alone. Maybe the house is quiet, and that's when suddenly your thoughts catch up with you. And you're then remembering the things that happened throughout the day that you shouldn't have said, you should have done, or what you've got tomorrow and I really don't want to get up and do that, or next week, or my job is boring, or I've had fights with my family, or I don't want to get up and go to church despite being the pastor. Whatever. It just seems that the night is that time where all the negativity can come flooding in. And sadness can kick in. And possibly that's when, if you're feeling depressive thoughts, or you're missing people, or you're feeling lonely, it seems to be in the dark that's when it seems to be magnified. And when the sun comes up the next day, somehow you can feel like, actually, I can get up and get going. There's a variety of aspects about Cliff Young I would like to encourage us with. One is, in the dark, you've got to keep moving. We're in a valley. If you're in a valley, the key is not to stop. It's fine to stop for a rest, but you've got to get back up and keep moving. And like Cliff Young, it need not be those big steps. If all you're doing is putting one foot in front of the other, you're doing 2 steps forward, 1 step back, it doesn't matter. You must keep moving. Do not stop in the valley. But don't stop there knowing that it is a valley, and you have a valley because you have mountains. It's a bit like if there's a shadow and darkness, but you get shadows because there's actually a light there. So keep moving. Focus on the light. Focus on the end of the valley. Focus on the mountains that you are going to walk through or you're going to walk up. Slow and steady rhythms. I'm sure we all see people who seem to have it all together, and they're leaps and bounds, and praise God this has happened, and praise God that's happened, and that's fantastic. I want to encourage us not to take that and think, well, it's not happening to me. God doesn't love me. God doesn't see me. And why do all the blessings seem to go to them? For starters, you don't know how much they're faking it till they make it. Secondly, it could just be their time of great blessings. But just know that your blessings are coming, and you will have those opportunities too. God doesn't have favourites. I think Rob and Deb used to say God doesn't even have grandkids. How can a parent love one child over another? Now, I know as I say that, it happens. I personally can't comprehend that. But even if that has been your experience, that is not God. God does not favour one of you over another and think, well, you can get the remnants because all the blessings are going here. At what point in the Bible did Jesus ever think, no, not you, but yes, you? So if it doesn't happen there, then it's not going to happen now. This is just not Cliff Young, but I'm sure he did it. He made his bed. What I'm encouraging you to do, and I've got to do this too, is we've just got to keep moving. Get back up, make the bed, read the Bible, press into God, do the next hard thing, small things, big things, habit forming, daily rhythms. Like there are just some suggestions. Some of them, you can take, you can think, no, that doesn't rock my boat, I can't do that. But we've just got to keep moving. Now, if you feel difficult to be moving, contact someone, let someone know. Send them a quick text and say, life is rubbish at the moment. You don't need to share great detail if you don't want to, but pick your target, pick someone you know will have your back with prayer. Because in time to come, they'll be calling you and saying, hey, my day is rubbish today, can you pray for me? You've got to keep getting up again and again and again. The evil one would love us all to just drop and stay there. Because if you're staying there, you are ineffectual. You are doing nothing. Your testimony is, I'm stuck in this bucket of mud and I'm not going anywhere. You've got to keep going. You've got to keep moving. That list is not exhaustive, but we've got a stack of people in the Bible. One of the many reasons for reading the Bible is whatever you're reading there, whoever you're reading about, whether it's Paul, whether it's Job, whether it's Hannah, who so desperately wanted a baby that her priest thought she was drunk when all she was doing was praying fervently. She got her baby. The story of Ruth and Naomi, persisting, persevering, sticking together. Read the book of Ruth. It's a beautiful book. It's also, I think, an easy read, as in it's a beautiful story. And it's one of those rare stories where it's got a happy ending. So if you're feeling a little bit, I don't want to read something that's got a depressive ending, Ruth, the book of Ruth, has a happy ending. Not quite they all live happily ever after, but it's that sort of a feel. There's Anna, who was a widow for so many years and was praying fervently to be able to see the sort of, God coming in human form. And she got to see baby Jesus when he was brought to the temple. The friends of the man on the mat. The man on the mat was just, desperate for healing, and it was his friends that picked him up and lowered him through the roof of the house that Jesus was at. Joseph, seriously, that's not a straightforward story. Jeremiah, prophet of doom, but he prophesied and he stuck with God. So many others there. Something I would like you to take, though, from some of this also is that many of these people, how can I say this? Many of these people had no idea what the next season was going to look like, and even where they would end up, what their life journey would look like. Many of these people probably thought, and I think many of us here, I for one, it's not that I had predicted what my life would look like, but I'm thinking I'm on this path. I'm thinking when I was younger and I became a Christian, I was thinking I'm happy to go wherever. God, send me wherever, and I'll go wherever. And while all my friends were thinking about marriage and relationships and boyfriends and, wow, does he like me, does he not? And, oh, he hasn't rung, and yes, he has. And, oh, well, they're getting married, whatever. I found this so, I was prepared to just not have any of that. Obviously, I got married. That was no one was more surprised than me that I found someone, or that Gary and I came together, and that story is pretty weird and wonderful, which I'm not going to bore you with now. Okay, I'm married, I'd done my degree, but I had no idea of what I was going to do. I wasn't going to be a teacher because I'm happy to teach, but the behaviour management of the students It's like, how do you control them? And really, who wants to learn? I was a Japanese teacher. It's not so much who wants to learn Japanese, but I knew that that was not your straightforward English, science, maths that everybody knows what you have to do, and you either enjoy it or you endure. But Japanese, like really, if I can get out of that and mess around. So I wasn't going to be a teacher. I fell into teaching. And again, that's a story that, like, no one was more surprised than me that I ended up in the classroom. I won't bore you with lots of other things, but it's like a lot of these people, like myself, thought we were doing on a particular part. God, this is where you want me, and that's fine. And then suddenly he just picks you up and puts you somewhere else. And he takes you down that path for a while, and then I've had it again to even end up here. But back to the obedience, where nothing you do is useless. Everything you do, everywhere you are, every experience you have is building you for where you are now, but also where you're going to go. I'd also done some psychology study in my degree, and I was thinking I'll go down the path of being a student welfare coordinator, do psychology, become a psychologist. For a variety of reasons that didn't happen. I got some taste of it, enjoyed it. I tried to get back into that. The door was being shut on me so many times to the point that I was thinking, this is wasted. It's not wasted, because it's really interesting how my study of psychology is actually just filtered through my teaching. And the number of times I have been in situations where I've had to draw upon my psychological studies and interests to actually give the appropriate response or answer or help a student. I've actually just had a couple of situations, even in this last week, with probably more so some extended family members, and apparently I've just sort of sent off what I think, look, I think this might help, try this, whatever, and they've come back and just sort of thanked me for it, and it has succeeded. That information has been helpful to get those people back on track. So again, I'm trying to highlight that whatever you're doing and being involved in is all going to be used for good, and it's all going to be used to God's glory. Why do we need to persevere? Very briefly, but the one who stands firm to the end will be saved. In Revelation, John says, or John's revelations here, he said to me, it is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty I will give water without cost from the spring of the water of life. Those who are victorious will inherit all of this, and I will be their God, and they will be my children. That's us now. Stick with him. I'll just finish with one more reading, which I don't have on the screen. Taking it back to Cliff Young and racing. We're all racers, but the race of life is probably more of a marathon. It's not a sprint. This is from Philippians chapter 3. Not that I have already obtained all this or have already arrived at my goal, but I press on to take hold of that for which Christ Jesus took hold of me. Brothers and sisters, I do not consider myself yet to have taken hold of it. But one thing I do, forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead. I press on toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus. Run in the lane that you are placed. I used to tell, it was just a quick story. I was noticing when my boys, when they started school and were part of school sports days, seemed to get this, or it didn't seem to be an issue. But I remember when my first girl was going for the receptions, all had to do just a little sprint from here to there as part of their sports day. And because it was, no hat, no play, they all had to be wearing their hats for the whole sports days. They're hurling bowls and jumping hurdles and whatever. But I noticed when it came to the races that these little reception kids are keeping their hats on. And of course, as the whistle goes, they start to run. Some of these kids lose their hats, so they stop and go back and get their hats. Others have their hats with the cord, so then their hat sort of goes down behind them and it's strangling them as they're trying to run. So I gave my kids the advice to run with your elbows out, which didn't really matter. Can I just say the lanes were wide, no kid was injured. But I was telling my children, you are allowed to take your hats off for your race, because these little reception kids were thinking, I've got to wear the hat, got to wear the hat. But it was just chaos as they were going back for the hats and being strangled, and others would think, forget the hat, and they're running, and of course they win the race. We have to run in the lane we have been placed in. And it's good to look left or right to see how others are going, and you see, yeah, others are getting ahead, I can do this too, or that one is falling down so I can lift them along. But do not look to the other people for comparative purposes like, well, what is wrong with me? You are all placed in the lane that you are placed in, and God's got great things for you. Sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's great, sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's fun. Keep moving in your lane. Perseverance. And do not let the evil one take you out. Because he's got great things for you. And if the evil one wants to knock you out, then know he's trying to knock you out because God's got great things for you.